Dimon said people feel good because they haven't seen the effect of tariffs, calling the market round trip a, quote, extraordinary amount of complacency. He said even with today's current rates, the tariffs are still, quote, pretty extreme. Mel.
I think he made the point that 10% across the board tariffs, that would still be the highest level since 1971. So we're talking about very high levels. Also, stagflation not off the table. He does tend to be conservative, though, in general, though.
Yeah, he said stagflation was essentially part of their scenario planning, and it's one that he thinks is actually double as likely as the markets are expecting. He also noted credit being a particular point of concern there, noting that in a recession, those losses could be even bigger than what we're used to in recessions, and saying that, you know, he would not personally be a buyer of credit right now. He thinks it's a really risky space.
Yeah, I thought that was a particularly interesting comment, that he really thought that credit spreads are nowhere near wide enough. But, you know, normally he tries to have this balance of being conservative, as you said, but also he's very rah-rah USA, right? American ingenuity and all of that. And he'd also talked about the market he thought was too high, that the 21 multiple is probably too high. But I'm surprised, though, with the capital markets. I would have thought Liberation Week was one of the craziest weeks ever, maybe ever, in terms of you know, volatility and volume. So there was a lot to like here, nothing wildly different than what you'd expect from him. I thought, though, the time frame of his tenure was a little longer than I was expecting, which I like that.
Oh, really? Because before,
wouldn't you rather he's free, frees up some time, possibly?
That's an excellent question. But I am long.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of the question that was posed to Dimon at the Investor Day, was basically like someone had looked at ChatGPT and they'd asked the computer, you know, what pop culture icon ChatGPT, you know, thought Jamie Dimon reminded them of. And the computer spit out Iron Man. And he said, Iron Man never retires. So why should you? Basically, that was kind of the feeling in the room. So I think Dimon was perhaps responding to that. But yeah, I think there were several analyst notes that suggested that if he said anything shorter than, say, 2 or 3 years in terms of his tenure as CEO, that would, you know, be a negative for the stock. Anything more than that would be a positive for the stock. So we kind of didn't really get too much in the way of specifics, but it wasn't shorter.
It's great to start the show with Leslie here on set with us. Number one.
It's rare.
This is fun.
Number two, you know, blockchain is not as big a deal. It doesn't matter as much as you think. I mean, he's been a crypto skeptic, but thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, that was the first question out of the gate, which was a little surprising. He, you know, he's definitely not a crypto supporter. He's not a Bitcoin supporter. He said the firm would custody Bitcoin. He would, you know, they would support crypto from that capacity. But he kind of analogized it to, you know, like, I don't think you should smoke, but if you want to smoke, I'm not going to stop you.
But they don't.
If you want to trade,
you can't buy Bitcoin if you're a JPMorgan client.
He said they would
right now.
Custody crypto is kind of the plan for the future for the firm.
I don't think he said anything that was shocking. He's always conservative. It is the one bank that touches Wall Street and also touches the consumer, so you get a little bit of everything. Did take up a little bit of credit loss assumptions potentially in 2026. That goes along with a slowing economy. I will say there was an executive that talked about the impact of AI. And we've talked about, I know you guys have talked about on the show, they expect potentially a 10% workforce reduction. We think about all the things that banks do. That's one you can imagine a lot can be done by AI. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was Marianne Lake talking. I think she was talking specifically about the operations element of CCB, consumer banking, essentially, that they've been able to find a lot of efficiency with AI and their kind of back office, their ability to handle customer complaints and so forth using agents to do that.
Well, and in terms of analogies, I mean, Jamie Dimon has been, you know, very much the weatherman over the last couple of years. I mean, he uses meteorological terms, and it was a beautiful spring day here in New York, right, guys?
Yes, it was.
I mean, you know,
we
would call
especially
these
for Yankee fans.
Yeah, well,
basking in the afterglow.
And
of
it's
glory.
And it's great that they can feel like that they want it in May, and that's a sunny day in May. But again, it's the question is Jamie Dimon, was it a more important conversation for Jamie Dimon, for JPMorgan, the stock, or for the stock market? And I think this is kind of like a Berkshire event. In other words, it really is a pulse check both on the economy. In Jamie's case, he often thinks internationally. I mean, he put a lot of caution just around international dynamics and geopolitics, which we've heard before. I think that's absolutely fair. My biggest takeaway is lower multiple for the S&P. I mean, that's really, if you boil it all down, what I heard is not. I don't think we care that much that JPMorgan's investment banking's down 15%. I don't think we really care as much about some of the dynamics. I think in terms of like one-offs and some of the spend that they're going to have on AI, which is also going to lead though to, I think, a higher margin. I think this was all about, hey. There's a lot of complacency out there, and after we've run 22% on the S&P off those intraday lows, it's also very interesting. The sense you got here is that Wall Street is a lot more concerned than Main Street, and that's interesting. And I do mean retail traders versus institutional, and I would argue the retail trader is the one that's been buying this dip.